Hi, in this episode I'll be talking to Jim and Craig from the Dive Line about their recent river cleanup work. Over a brew they give me advice on the planning, preparation and diving involved in what on the surface sounds like an easy task, but can be quite an undertaking when you get into the planning the dive and diving the plan. Do you fancy a brew?
There we all are, gallery view. It's really bad having to look at myself in it. I don't.
Yeah, it's awful, mate.
Yeah,
Mate.
it's bad for us.
Jim, you look like you've died. You've gone from bright pink to.
I know.
The white and pasty.
I know. I can't get the colours right on this bloody camera.
Craig, you need to teach me about white balance. It's horrendous.
But you're not recording this as video, are you?
Absolutely.
I thought you did audio.
I just want to show them bingo wings that you're showing off there, giving it the big guns. You can't tense fat.
So are you doing audio or video?
Yeah, it'll be audio, mate. I just record it like you do, like this, and then obviously blank it all
cool.
out. So
You can't tense fat. I love that. I've got to use that tonight.
I know, that's coming from a fucking little ginger dwarf.
yeah, but powerful. Look at these. These aren't chippy tits, these, mate.
Fucking hell, Mark.
Listen to this.
Yeah, but it's easy for you. You're only 3'2".
Right. Well, so I hope you've got a brew. Have you got a brew? Nice mug, mate. That's a nice mug. I prefer Craig's though, to be fair. That green. I need one of them now. I'll swap you. So Craig and Fridge, better known as Jim from the Dive Line, welcome to Fancy a Brew podcast. If you want to give us a bit of info about you, tell us who you are, what you're about, and don't give too many spoilers away.
Well, thank you for inviting us on, first of all. I'm Craig, and together with Jim, we are the hosts of the Dive Line, as you know. I'm an experienced diver, love my underwater photography, and Jim, you go ahead, tell them about you.
Nothing to say.
Don't sell the dream too much.
Yeah, scuba diver, diving instructor. Love diving. Love talking about diving. Love you.
Oh, mate. Are you trying to rubbish my podcast?
Absolutely not. No.
I will add that we are both, being serious now, very passionate about the environment. And I think that's going to come out in some of the chat we're going to have now, Andy.
Yeah. Obviously, we've been talking for months. We've been diving together. We've been good friends, having lots of chat and stuff. But most recently, in Scuba Diver magazine, you had a little featured article about a bit of an environmental cause that was, I believe, quite close to you. And you've jumped all over it and been quite an inspiration to others, whether it be in your area or more sort of nationwide, which is kind of why I wanted this chat, because I've done a dive, as you know, quite recently that I found was, whilst in an idyllic spot in Windermere in the Lake District, it was an absolute rubbish dump. So I want to chat to you about the pitfalls, the pros and cons about doing a rubbish cleanup in the underwater environment, if you can. Elaborate a little bit on it for us.
Sort of starting from a bit of a strange place, if you was to ask us what our favourite bit of dive kit is, Jim and I have the same answer. And that's our mesh bags. Whenever we go diving, we always have a mesh bag with us. And if we can pick up a bottle and a can and a bit of plastic that's in there whilst we're enjoying the dive, that's what we do. And we feel like we've achieved something. And that's sort of where all of this started. You go, Jim.
Well, yeah, it actually started off. We're looking under a medieval bridge for some, let's say, historical artifacts. But we couldn't find anything. There's just so much rubbish in there, and there was loads of kids jumping in as well. And we just sort of said, "Well, we've got to do something before something happens.
Yeah,
we've got to clear up all this rubbish." And we started it. We haven't finished it. We're going to go back and do some more. But yeah, it was just horrendous. And it turns out it's in all rivers, in all waterways, like you said, in Windermere. All the rivers, your local rivers, that'll be everywhere.
Yeah. Did you have to seek any sort of permissions, or did you just crack on with it?
On that one, we just cracked on with it. We didn't think too hard about what would happen afterwards.
Yeah.
We did find out more about what we should have done afterwards. But yeah, it was kind of cracked on with it, and we'll probably do that again.
So someone who's perhaps aspiring to do something similar, not in a very sheep-like manner, but purely because you have inspired me to think, well, I can get a few people together here. And certainly when I did a post about the state of the water, a few people were like, if you're going to do something, let me know. So if I was going to do it right and legit, now with the knowledge that you're armed with, now you know what you've done, what mistakes can you help me not make?
Well, first of all, if you're going to take people with you, you will be shocked how much rubbish you come out the water with. So you've got to pre-plan before you dive where you're going. You know, you can't just have a riverbank full of shopping trolleys, bicycles, and bed frames. You've got to pre-plan where that's all going to go. When Jim and I started this, it was actually because of lockdown. We were desperate to get wet. We'd been locked down for 3 months. We went to a local mill that's only 3 meters deep just to have a quick dive, and it was a load of rubbish, and we pulled it out, and it was all stuff that fit in the bin, so there was no issue. When we went to the medieval bridge that Jim mentioned, it was a whole different story. We pulled out so much that a bit of pre-planning we've learned would have gone a long way in what going to do with all this. The local council were really supportive and took it all away, but that's certainly something you need to think about.
That's refreshing, because when I was up at Cape and Ray last week, I bumped into Paul Rose, who obviously I've had a guest on here before, and we've developed a little bit of a friendship, and he'd seen that I was planning to do this, and when I asked him, he said he'd done something several years ago, but he brought 247 people to that dive site. So you could probably dive all of Lake Windermere with those 247 people. But they brought out quite a couple of tons of rubbish, and then they brought it all together and they did a few different things with it. But when it came to disposing of it, the council perhaps weren't as supportive as he expected. And you can't just leave 2 tons, whatever it is, in bags at the side of the local litter box,
Exactly.
because someone's going to be a bit chuffed to bits there. So I think he got stung for a couple of grand in having to take it to the tip or skips or something. So it's good to see that your local council's on board, and I think that's going to be, like, I'm making notes as we talk now of things, but it'll be council will be number one, because
to be honest, I think you should start smaller.
Yeah,
you know, Lake Windermere is not a small place, is it? And you know, all these people who want to get involved, that takes a lot of organisation. You know, we just had 4 people in a very small area. We pulled out loads, and you know, you do need lift bags because some of it's quite heavy.
Yeah,
I think you're probably biting off more than you can chew going straight in at a big venue.
Well, to be fair, it'll be one small dive site. It'll not be trying to take in the whole lake, which is obviously miles more than I think Paul could have even chewed at the time, and he's obviously got a bit of a reputation for being a personality. So for me, it would just be this one small dive site, and you know, 4 or 5 of my friends that I dive with once we're out of this flipping lockdown that we're back in tomorrow morning. So if and when that clears, you know, half a dozen of us will go along and do it as legit. And I'm more bothered about the getting rid of the waste issue. It's just a dive, really, in the biggest scheme of things. It's just a dive, isn't it? Like you said, with your mesh bags and a lift bag. Well, I carry that most of the time, certainly on sea dives.
And I would say, though, that actually it isn't just a dive. You're going in there with a particular purpose, and what you're pulling out is broken glass, sharp, rusted, been in there a long time, sharp edges. We didn't have dive gloves on. We had gardening gloves that were slip proof. That meant that you couldn't cut your hands through. That you don't want to be taking down anyone that isn't very confident in trim and their positioning in the water, and B, the thought of an entanglement. And the other thing that we'd worked out is knowing that we would be disturbing a peat bottom and creating a zero visibility environment very quickly in the specific spot we were in. Yeah. We already had some pre-planned sound signals, knowing that there is the potential that we can't see each other.
All right.
And so I think the level of experience that, I mean, it's fantastic. We've inspired other people to do this, and you know, we're innovators in our podcast, we feel, and lots of people have copied lots of things that we've done. This is one of those things we're over the moon people would copy, because it's fantastic for the environment. But you do need to put some thought into it. You do need to use experienced divers. You need to pre-plan some hand and light signals. You need to wear the right equipment. You need to have airbags, etc., etc., etc. It's one of these ones where it isn't just jump in the water and find some tin cans. It's you've got to go into it with a bit more thought.
All right.
And also things like dangling reels and that sort of stuff. In the river we were at, it was quite shallow, and we used a diver below marker, but none of us had it attached to us. We put it on an anchor next to us, so people could see where we were in case some idiot came along and jumped off the bridge, which is 15 foot high, but you never know. But we wouldn't have it attached, and we wouldn't have any dangling reels, and we all checked each other that all of our kit was in much tighter. No mesh bags hanging, no, you know, you've got to expect an entanglement and be pre-prepared for that. And all of us had discussed removing our scuba kit, that practicing that drill in a swimming pool, so that if you had to take your kit off because no one could see you or hear you, and that was the only way out. Bear in mind, we're in 3 meters of water where we were, so that was the worst case scenario, that you had to get out of your BCD and swim up 3 meters. So what? It's like being in a swimming pool, but we still had thought that through, hadn't we, Jim?
Cracking idea, yeah.
Having done it a couple of times now, one of the things that has happened on both occasions is free flow. So we're using our own tanks with our alternate air to do the lift bags.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. You need a spare tank to put lift. I mean, if you find anything big enough where you need a lift bag, then take a spare tank. So you got your 15 litre on the back, but have a spare tank, because you're going to need it. You're getting a free flow. Craig lost his within 30 seconds. All his air was gone. You know, there's a lot of considerations, and we planned it for a long time before we did it.
I'm glad I said it is just a dive, because now clearly I found out it just isn't. Not only did I know the rubbish was going to be a nightmare on the surface, I didn't perhaps take into account just how much. I mean, I've given this very little thought, I'll be honest, until I knowing we were going to have this chat. So I'm quite happy to not edit that out and make me look better. It's about, I think, chats like this are about helping others avoid some of the pitfalls, whether it be getting into trouble with the council, or whether it be getting into trouble underwater, or getting into trouble underwater on your own. It's even worse, isn't it? So,
well, look, I mean, we know each other, and we've dived together, like you said, and we've become friends. So when you plan it and when you do it, we're more than happy to come along and help you, and help you organise it if you want to.
Gleaming.
Because it's not straightforward. There is a lot to think about, especially, you know, simple things like plan the dive the plan.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt this episode to drop another plug for my Patreon account, but I do spend a good 7 or 8 hours producing, editing and launching each episode of this podcast, and sometimes days on the production of my YouTube videos. So to help keep this content strong and valuable to you, I'm asking that you become a sponsor and a patron of the Are You a Scuba Diver Fancy a Brew podcast. When you become a supporter, not only will you have my undying appreciation for helping support the podcast, but you'll be able to take advantage of some of the many tiered benefits that come with it, some of which includes official merchandise. If you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, then visit www.patreon.com/fancyaBrew. There you'll see all the different levels of subscription and how to join the Fancy a Brew community. So without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
Oh, that age-old adage.
but also, you know, a pre-dive recce of the site is really essential. Bearing in mind that where we started this, we went in just to have a little bit of a mooch around, being an old bridge, see what we could find, discovered all the rubbish, and then made a plan to come back and do something about it. We on that first dive, we cleared up, I don't know, 10, maybe 15 black bin bags of rubbish from along the edges and outside the water, where it was a bit of a beauty spot where kids used to sit, or still do to this day. So we cleared up all of that because it was easy to do and we could reach it and do that. But we came back and planned. So you need to check the bottom out. I mean, the lift bags weren't to do with the weight. We used the lift bags on shopping trolleys because the bottom half of each shopping trolley was embedded in the river.
Yeah.
So it was put some air in a bag and get some weight being lifted on the shopping trolleys, and then one either side, giving them a shake until eventually they start breaking free because there's an upward pull from the airbag. It wasn't so much that we're trying to pull a grand piano out of the water there. It was more to do with the riverbed. The Windermere could be completely different. So depth is important. What the substructure is of the floor that you're trying to get the rubbish from. How deep is it? Where is it? How embedded? And so you really need to go and have a look, do a dive, make a plan, think about it, and then keep the numbers small. I would say no more than 4 divers because of the responsibility. You just need to be able to communicate and everyone understand the plan, and you lose the control when there's too many people.
Absolutely.
How did you get on with the planning beforehand? Did you struggle with getting people to come and help you, and how did you develop your plan and so on?
We didn't. We knew who we wanted to come and help us.
Yeah.
And why we wanted them to come and help us. So that was relatively straightforward. We just chose them, asked them if they could do it when they were free, and went through the plan with them. We spent a while. Craig done a big plan on a A4 bit of paper, turned into about 3 pages. And then we just sent it to them, said, look, if you want to add anything, take anything off. But safety is the first thing, isn't it? So we had to put that plan into place, having seen the site already, like Craig said, because there's so much rubbish, but it's all on different levels.
Yeah.
And with limited viz, there's a potential risk there with when you're pulling stuff out and it just, honestly, it goes black. And just because it's only 3 meters doesn't mean a thing, does it?
Yeah.
So
well, this is on a sort of a really steep incline, drops to about, I think it's about 30 meters deep is Windermere, but after about 7 or 8, it's just jet black. It's like a night dive, whichever direction you look, it's honestly, and that's without you kicking the viz up. So short of us spreading out and keeping apart, because there's no real flow other than on the surface from the wind, it is hard because it just hangs, doesn't it, like a snot in the water. It doesn't move, and
it doesn't seem it, Jim, but we were about 5 or 6 because we did 3 clear ups at Horsted Mill before we even went to the other place. So, and there's a couple of times there, so you forget, it's been quite a few times. But I think going back to what you were saying, Jim, Andy, the recce is so important, that understanding what you're in for and what people are to expect, and being able to come up with a safety plan. If you haven't been in the water and looked at your terrain, stirred it up and seen what happens, and if you move to the side, are you instantly out of it, or does it just hang there? And where we were, the river was flowing, so if you moved a foot to one side, 30 centimeters to one side, crystal clear water. Well, not that crystal clear, but you were out of the murk that you'd created. Because of the flow of the river, the river was moving. You are not going to get that in Windermere. It's just going to hang because it's still water, effectively. So the wreck is really important in understanding what you're in for, and then planning that out, with the experienced people you're going to go with. Unfortunately, we're so far apart, so the travelling now in these circumstances is not easy. But we're at the end of the phone and an email. If there's anything we can do to help with advice or from our experience, we're more than happy to do that. And if we inspire other divers to get into their local rivers, as we've harped on about this whole chat, do it safely, be careful, plan it. Don't just jump in and go off without a plan. But if we inspire other people to clear up the rivers, fantastic.
Getting the word out afterwards is probably a good thing as well. Obviously, if I didn't know you two and didn't follow what you do on social media and with your podcast and YouTube, I would have never heard about it.
So I noticed you got a feature in Scuba Diver magazine. That must have worked out really well for you.
Mark was really supportive. He actually came to us. He'd heard it. We didn't go to him and say, "Oh, Mark, will you do something with this?" He'd actually heard about it and said, "That's brilliant what you guys did. I'm going to promote that for you, and thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Mark." And he's been very supportive, and you know. The magazine is brilliant and we love it. But so, yeah, we've got a good relationship with Mark. But we got some local press coverage and he'd picked up on that. And, you know, that's a great thing. We're showing divers doing something good for the environment.
Absolutely. I can't see me doing this too quickly. Like, certainly not before Christmas. I think it's going to be certainly between January and Easter, I think, purely because I've got so much other things. We're all busy this time of year, aren't we, with Christmas coming up and everything else. And
that's the good thing. You've got time. And honestly, I really would get yourself in a river, local river.
The trolleys you pull out, if you find them, the council can't take them away. Effectively, the council would be stealing the trolley because the ownership of the trolley remains with the supermarket. And we pulled out at least half a dozen, 7, maybe even 8 trolleys. Jim went along to the local supermarket and had a chat with the manager and told him what we'd been done. And you picked that up, Jim. You had a chat with him.
Waitrose, wasn't it? So, I told him literally they're his trolleys. He's got to pick them up.
Yeah.
Because no one else can. The Environment Agency couldn't. The council couldn't. No one could. It had to be them. Otherwise, it's theft. But they were pretty good, actually. They went down the same day, and by 2:00 that afternoon, had picked them up and they were gone.
No way. That's excellent.
Yeah.
But bear in mind, these have been under the water for an awful long time. I mean, these were wrecks. They were completely unusable. Waitrose would have had to pay to scrap them. It wasn't like give them a wash and put them back in the trolley line. These were awful because they've been underwater for donkey's years. So, but to their credit, and other supermarkets are available, but to their credit, Waitrose were fantastic.
Nice. I'd probably struggle if it was around here because the scrap man had come and get them. Before I got Tesco around to pick up the scrap man and have them away.
If you get anything, Andy, just stick them on your wall.
Oh, yeah, my car battery, didn't I? I'd left the car battery outside of our house, Craig, for about 20 minutes and it had gone. When I come out to move it, it did add it. I'm like, it's because it wasn't a new Bosch one, a couple of £100 worth, and it was an old one that was goosed. But I was tidying my garage, left it on the wall, and scrap man had done a dash back. He probably did a little crawl up my lawn and had it away.
I've just moved house. I've got a load of stuff to take to the tip. All I need to do is come up and put it on your wall. That'll be it. Be gone.
How am I going to publicise it quite well? Do you think go to my local press, local media?
Yeah, I would. I'd go to the local press and just see what everyone's interested in the environment, aren't they? And it's such a hot thing, isn't it? No matter what the environment or conservation is at the moment, whether it's a river, whether it's the seas and oceans, whether it's a landfill. Everyone's interested in it.
And we purposely stayed quiet about it before the event because, first of all, the danger side, we didn't want to fill the river up with a whole load of sheep all saying, "Oh, that's a great idea." We needed to make sure that the people that were involved in the plan and knew what we were doing were the people that were there. So we specifically didn't start publicising what we were doing because we didn't want the 200 people or 50 people turning up all thinking, "Oh, we can't go off diving on a liveaboard. Let's go and do this," because it was a small area and we didn't want to create a free-for-all. Maybe that's something in 3 years' time. Maybe that's exactly what we'll be doing. But now, at the early stages, we wanted to keep it contained. And I definitely would recommend that for you. Go and do a recce. Keep your numbers down, and keep hold of the safety.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think it was kept quiet because although we want to encourage people to go out and do this in every corner of the country, get in every single river, you don't want just anybody to go and do it.
Yeah.
You've got to have some experience. You've got to have some awareness of the environment that you're in and that safety side of it. So I think that's why we kept it quiet, because there's a lot of divers out there who think, "Oh, I'll go and do that." And I'd hate to have that on my conscience that some divers that are just qualified. I'm qualified to 18 metres, so 3 metres is no problem. you don't want to encourage that kind of person to jump in just yet, do you?
No, it's quite easily to become task loaded, isn't it?
Again, the depth is very relevant because people might feel over safe because it's so shallow in a river. You know, they may go into 3 meters thinking it's only 3 meters. This is really easy, and that could potentially catch you out. You've really got to think it through as a you know, the type of dive that it is, and that's moving sharp objects with rust and glass and stuff that can harm you, cut you, entrap you, and you've got to think about all of that first.
Well, thanks for coming on, guys. I appreciate it. But if nothing else, it'll hopefully inspire a few people to be a bit safer if they're going doing this. If not else, won't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was genuine. What Jim said is that you got to try and harp on a little bit about the safety, because what we don't want on our conscience is people going, "Oh, what a great idea," and then going drowning because they thought it was a real easy thing to go and do. You need to think it through.
Defo. Right, go on then. Thanks for coming, boys. See you later.
So that brings to an end the second bonus edition with my friends Craig and Jim from the Dive Line. Links to all the things we discussed are in the podcast notes. You've been listening to Are You a Scuba Diver? Fancy a Brew podcast with me, Andy the Northern Diver. You can find more scuba related content on my YouTube channel, and the link is in the podcast notes. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please consider subscribing and leaving us a 5-star review. And to become a patron of the podcast, then visit www.patreon.com/FancyABrew. There you'll see all the different levels of subscription and how to join the Fancy a Brew community. If there's someone or something you'd like us to discuss, then let us know via our Facebook page. Thanks for listening. See you on the next one.